welcome.
Thank you.
So let's dive right in. I took a look at the runs last night, and I think that it's better than I expected. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. I have said this for a while. I think that the debate, all the conversations we've been having last year and this year are just not where we're really going to get the biggest boost for Poudre because of just where you sit with your demographics. All of the talk about the formula is about which demographic category gets weighted or more or less, or, how we do that. And as long as you guys are just kind of, average in the middle, and you don't have you're not huge, you're not tiny, you're not huge, way at risk, but you don't have, high cost of living either. And so it's just kind of not the place for us to see a lot of gains, really, which is why I was just sort of trying to pick at these little things, because I'm like, what can we find? And I have literally said, both the speaker and some of the other legislators that I've talked to can tell you that, like, I always kind of come to them and go, like, what can we do for Poudre in this? Like, where is there something? And I feel like simultaneously kind of silly, but also desperate, I guess, when, I'm trying to go after the small attendance center, because it's sort of like, I'm sure that if I talk to Dave Montoya about this, he's just going to roll his eyes and be like, it's a few $1,000s, who cares, that kind of thing. But it's sort of like, I don't know what else to do for you guys to try to come up with something that's, I just don't think there's much meaningful that we can get until we start having the real adequacy conversations. Kristen, I was going to follow up though on that issue with the floor.
Yes.
I did a little more digging, and I haven't actually opened. I think I have a document that I got from Mark Carey, who's the Ledge Council staff on school finance. And he texted it to me, and I hate trying to read things on my phone. So I just haven't translated it over to my computer yet. But the way he described it to me when we were talking was, he said that because of the multiplicative factor in the old formula, that's what really created the discrepancies and that bottom out. And he said now what ends up happening is it's more level, like there's just kind of a built-in floor functionally, because basically the base is the floor, essentially, and so it's like because everything gets multiplied off of the base. And so you don't have this situation where you've got the base times this, and then the product of that times something else. It's just like base times this, base times that, base times that, if that makes sense.
Okay, so, and then it's added on individually, kind of.
Yeah, it's like, I think I want to open up because he actually did, he did a plotted them out, basically. And so I do want to kind of open that up and dig into it a little more. I can't remember when I talked to him. I want to say it was probably Wednesday or so. When were you guys here this week or last week? My weeks are
we were both there last week.
And
then Poudre, and then Poudre came up with a bunch of other schools yesterday. Yep. So
I was trying to remember when I saw you guys. So it's definitely been since then, but it was either the tail end of last week or the beginning of this week when I talked to Mark about this issue. So, and then,
as long as there's some sort of floor that people aren't going to bottom out. That's right. That was the worry of if you are, especially a group like us, where if you're super average, then what you do is you just keep going down, because it's
I think that it just kind of depends on how what you consider bottoming out. If bottoming out is sort of like, oh, we just get, the base and not much more, then not that you're going to not get more than the base, but I think, like, relative to where you sit with other districts, you will get less more, I guess, than other districts get. But yes, there's not going to be some like infinite plunge that you could just keep going down and down and down. I think you will.
That was my concern when you said there was no floor, and I was thinking back to if there was not that setting of you at least get this, if not more,
right?
Then do we just continue to go down infinitely?
I do feel like there's probably still, and the other thing that you and I talked about is all of this will become more noticeable and we'll sort of see where things fall as we get more of the new formula implemented.
Right.
The proposal right now is that for the upcoming year, we're only going to have 10% of our money go through the new formula and the rest will still be the old formula. So I don't think we will really notice the absence of an actual defined floor
Okay.
for probably 6 more years. But
Okay.
but once we get there, I think it's worth looking at because even the old J curve, I think there's always been a base. And so to that extent, there's always been sort of a minimum that districts would get. I think the problem was sort of you compare where Poudre sits to where other districts sit. And there, it's sort of like less about whether you could just infinitely drop off the getting any money and more about how you are compared to other schools or other districts, I should say. So I still think there's some room to talk about that and whether or not that, I mean, this all kind of folds into the adequacy argument, which is really, where you guys are squarely, I think, in the middle of like, that's really the place for you is the adequacy argument. So, but when we sort of get to that point of adequacy and really God willing someday have actual more money to put into the formula, looking at whether it makes sense to maybe have, right now the floor is you take state average and you guarantee every district gets at least, I think it's 93% of that or something like that. So, looking at some sort of a guarantee like that, because the state average will definitely be higher than the base. It'll be, it'll take into consideration all of those teeny tiny districts that get like 20 grand or more per kid and, things like that. So I think, again, that's a whole other thing that has to do with adequacy, thorough uniform, all that kind of stuff. But it's definitely worth still keeping an eye on. But I do feel at least a little bit better that there's probably not going to be the natural development of an actual J curve like there was under the formula before we had a floor. So
Good.
That made me feel a little bit better. I didn't mean to just launch into school finance, but since we're here, the other information that I have on that, which is not much change really. So you got, I think, the speaker's proposal, it's a 10% phase in for next year. It's a 4-year averaging. There is a split of whether or not we need to have the bill this year lay out future years of an expectation to gradually ratchet down declining enrollment. I think that's the governor's intent. And his argument was sort of, well, this is putting us on this unsustainable path, which is a little frustrating because the bill last year had 4 years that, it didn't speak to that ratcheting down of the declining enrollment. And I'm not sure why the governor's office didn't tumble to this unsustainability, but maybe it's I don't know, after the special session property tax changes, I'm not sure what is different, but they are now saying that this is putting us on an unsustainable trajectory to maintain the 4-year averaging indefinitely. And so we need to ratchet that down. Obviously, a lot of folks are like, we need to keep that. And the approach they're taking is basically to say, not necessarily that we need to keep it indefinitely, but that it just would, the bill this year should only speak to what we have in the immediately, in the next year. So in the 25, 26.
Okay. But that would mean that they'd have to argue this whole thing again next year. I mean, from scratch, essentially, right?
Well, yeah, we would be relitigating this issue for sure. So I am not quite sure where that's going to land. And I was actually going to check in with the speaker today because Friday seems to be the day that she has her meetings, does her press conferences, releases things. She said when we sat down with her 2 weeks ago, I'm pretty sure it was 2 weeks ago, that she was hoping to have a draft soon. And then I kind of heard through the grapevine I'm not sure that I would consider this confirmed, but I heard it from more than one person that her hope is to introduce it before the long bill. First, when I heard that, which doesn't happen almost ever, school finance always follows the long bill.
Yeah.
When I first heard that, but there's no way. And then the JBC just this morning announced that they definitely will not be meeting their deadline to introduce by Monday, which they were supposed to.
Yeah.
So the JBC budget long bill introduction is now scheduled for March 31st, full week later. And
Okay.
that does make me think it is possible that the speaker could get her proposal introduced before the long bill. How much it moves, like you get a bill on paper, you get it introduced and it has a number and assigned to a committee hearing does not necessarily mean anything happens. It sits there for weeks. So I don't know how quickly it will actually move once it's introduced, but that was the latest that I've heard on that. And then, I mentioned the kind of the split. It sounds like the governor's office is lobbying some CFOs that have been involved in this to try to get people comfortable with that ratcheting down of the averaging. I don't
CFOs for
know.
schools?
What's that?
CFOs for schools?
Say it again. I still didn't hear. He's doing what?
He's working with the CFOs in school districts.
Yes. So, well,
Okay.
I only know that I don't know how broadly he's doing this. I just spoke with the CFO of DPS and he definitely, Mark Ferrandino did call the DPS CFO. I don't know if he's making calls to other CFOs or how broadly that's happening, but apparently his ask of the DPS CFO was like, hey, you guys need to get on board with this. This is the only way, blah, blah, blah. So, I think that there's definitely a push from the governor's office. I think the speaker is trying to accommodate the governor's wishes. He has threatened to veto the entire School Finance Act if it doesn't include what he's calling the glide path of the averaging, ratcheting down over future years. I'll only speak for myself when I say I really do not want to be back here for a special session on school finance, which is what would happen if we got it vetoed. So
Yeah.
whatever it takes to get this bill passed, I'm gonna encourage people to do. Find a path somehow. So that's about all I have. Oh, the last piece was the one decision that the JBC has made related to school finance was that they did make a transfer into the state ed fund from the general fund to cover 150 million above what is in the state ed fund. So that really was, and Kirkmeyer repeated this over and over. This is not an extra 150 million. This is not above and beyond. This is meant to be the, just the minimum of what we have to put in. And so, and I think she even said that to you guys maybe, because did that just happen before you were down
it
here?
had just happened. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
because the way I understood it was they were taking from the general fund that 150 million to cover essentially Amendment 23. Because otherwise they were going to be below that. And the question was, where's it coming from? And the answer was the general fund.
Yeah. So basically, I think the only way that they were able to sort of reach an agreement on that general fund transfer, because Kirkmeyer is adamantly opposed to moving the new formula forward. So I think the way they were able to get everybody on board with that transfer was to say, all right, we're going to put aside the argument of how this money goes out the door, whether it is new formula, old formula, or some phase in between. And we're just going to focus on what is the dollar amount that we have to meet our constitutional obligation. That calculation was 150 million. Sorry, it's kind of loud. People are talking right next to me. So it was sort of outside of the debate about which formula to use or how the money gets distributed. It was more about what's the absolute minimum we have to provide for schools this year. And once they got that calculation, that went into the state ed fund on top of what's already in the state ed fund. And so now they are going to have the debate about, well, does the state ed fund balance support, this proposal, the speaker's proposal? Like, do we have enough in the state ed fund? So it's all basically it's sort of consolidated the discussion of the what to fund and said, okay, now all the money that we're going to use to fund whatever is all in the state ed fund. What do we have enough money to fund? Okay. So that was done a couple weeks ago. I can't remember when that happened, but you were already aware of that. So that's pretty much, I think, gets us up to speed on where things sit with regard to school finance. Obviously, I will, alert you all when the bill actually drops. I'm going to see if I can, they're on the floor. Who knows how long today? They're debating the magazine capacity bill. So it could be hours. It will be hours. It has been hours. They're still going. So anyway, I hopefully will, the speaker will be around and maybe I could at least get a text message about, anticipation of timing or that kind of thing. So
Okay.
We have a couple new bills, both Senate, and if I missed something, please let me know, because I try to go back and look at my notes from our previous meeting and use that as my marker for where to start when I go through the new bills. But by my calculation, we had, come on, sorry, I got to get logged into my tracker here. I opened my computer at the last minute thinking I was doing all this on my phone. So the first bill on the list of new ones is Senate Bill 191, which actually already went through the first committee. It requires, they amended it pretty dramatically. So it's not quite so prescriptive on districts. Sorry, I'm just going to get to it and pull it up here. Cardiac emergency plans for schools. It kind of changes it to, let me just pull up the amendment because it's effectively a strike below. So the meat of the bill will now just say on or before January 1 of 2026, if a public school acquires or has acquired an AED, the local education provider that operates the public school shall require the public school to place and maintain AEDs in accordance with nationally recognized evidence-based standards for emergency cardiovascular care. And then it has a mirror of that same language applicable to non-public schools. And then it changes the title to be more specific to just saying, do you have to have this AED maintenance and placement in school, related to AED maintenance and placement in schools. So basically just that you have to have a plan that conforms with national standards or whatever. So that one went through, right. Just gonna pull this up. Went through Senate Ed, I believe, on Wednesday. And unanimous vote. I don't think they were able to put it on consent because of the amendment, but it got out of Senate Ed on the 19th unanimously. Okay. So that one, if you want to weigh in, it's fine, but it also is moving right along and doesn't look like it's got a lot of opposition to it. The one that I would like to have maybe some review of, maybe if we, want to take a look at it and chew on it. The dyslexia bill, Senate Bill 200, which has had some concern from districts that I have spoken to, although nobody is really weighing in so much yet other than just to have an amend position. But Senator Kolker has a bill that requires LEPs that have a kindergarten program to administer the readiness program within the first 60 days. Current law requires that. I think this eliminates that requirement and then adds a dyslexia screening requirement. So it clarifies that a teacher may, sorry, I'm trying to find my place here. Well, I think the meat of it is that it clarifies that a teacher may conclude that an early elementary student has significant reading deficiency and requires remediation through a specialized approach to instruction. You have to develop your own process for identifying these students with dyslexia and adopt a screening tool that conforms with certain requirements by the 25-26 school year. So basically next school year. So the feedback I've heard, or the concern that I've heard from other districts, is basically one of the other district lobbyists kind of saying, what do your districts think about this? You know, we have concerns. I think it is around the requirement for the dyslexia screening. So I'm kind of reading it and thinking, I'm not really sure why people are so up in arms about it, but or, you know, if the other part is problematic, certainly let me know about that too. The kindergarten, is it the early placement or something? So anyway, I wanted to just kind of bring it to your attention. And I don't know if there's somebody, you know, in the district that, like a reading specialist maybe or something, interventionist person.
We can send that along to somebody to take a look at, because I'm wondering if it's something about the implementation of the 2025-26 school years. If we have to change, I don't know if there's a change in software or if there's a change in hardware. I don't know what that would mean as far as money, time, training, you know, because that's where I think people might get concerned, is if I have to do this in August, but I don't have any idea of what it is I'm supposed to be doing.
Right. Yeah, and as with a lot of these bills, it's much more difficult for me to actually be able to determine whether it's problematic or not when I don't really have a good sense of the current practice, and whether this is something that, oh yeah, we're already doing that, no big deal, or oh my gosh, this is a total overhaul of how we currently do things. So that's really kind of where I lean on the, okay. So let me just pull that up again to get the details for you, because I don't think it has. Okay, so it's scheduled for week after next, March 31st in Senate Ed. I suspect by the time am I thinking of my calendar right? Now I'm questioning my calendar skills. Yes, 28th is next Friday. Okay, so by the time we chat again, I suspect we'll see a whole lot more districts that have had a chance to actually review this and weigh in. So we can also kind of evaluate that if it's something that, you know, sometimes it's better for folks to sort of team up and have CASB out in front, or CASE being kind of the front on this. You know, I'm sensitive to the optics of how certain bills can, you know, you don't want to look like you are saying like, oh, we don't want to test for dyslexia, or we don't want to have to, you know, serve these kids or something. So I want to make sure that whatever is in the bill is, we can articulate why exactly it's problematic, and or what we're doing in lieu, or, you know, to serve that same population in a better way or more efficient or something. So, so yeah, we can kind of revisit that next week. And if there's, you know, feedback that you get via email and you want to send it to me before, I can kind of fold that in. I'm sure it seemed to be one, just based on some of the folks who have approached me, seems to be one that might get a lot of attention. You know, there are always these bills that get introduced and nobody says boo about them. And I kind of go, oh yeah, you got to have an AED on your, you know, got to have a plan for it if you got one at your school. And then there are the ones that the minute they drop, people are like, did you see this? Did you see this? What do you think? What are your districts saying? So this is the latter, I would say. So yeah.
So Connor, do you want to send that along and see what the response is from staff?
Sure. Yeah, I was thinking, you know, a couple of people on that may want to take a look at it. I do think that again, I haven't read the whole bill. I think maybe some other districts or people are having consternation around time frame.
Yeah.
It
Wow,
seems
yes.
it seems it's got some really good stuff in there that I think that we might already be incorporating into our program. That would be good for all districts, but I'm sure people are saying the same thing by September. Yeah. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'll send it along.
Okay, well, yeah, just let me know what you hear back. Last thing I just put into my notes was just kind of the quick update on some of the things that passed well, I think I only went back 1 week. I probably should have gone back 2 since we haven't talked for 2 weeks, but just in this past week. So as I mentioned, Senate Bill 191 was the AED bill that just passed on the 19th. That was amended and unanimous. 164, I knew all these when I was making my notes, and now I don't remember the numbers. 164 is Senate Bill 164. Oh, yes, the opioid antagonist availability by the State Board of Health also passed 32-0. That passed the Senate. And that was the one that kind of focused less on the school side, but more on the State Board of Health, availability of the products. And then House Bill 1250, which is the notification for parents of some of the gun violence prevention laws that have been adopted in recent years. That one passed the House 43-21 on the 19th. House Bill 1210, which is the data reporting requirements, sort of the evaluation of those and an attempt to kind of consolidate data reporting. That one passed the House unanimously on Wednesday. House Bill 1059 is the food waste reduction in public schools. That one also passed. Oh, I guess it did have one no vote. Sorry, I was about to say unanimously, 32-1 and passed the Senate. So that's the second chamber. So it's effectively done.
All right, which one was that again?
Sorry, the House Bill 1059. It's food waste reduction in public schools.
Thank you. I just didn't catch the first two.
Yeah, 1059. And then 178, which is the K-12 social and emotional health pilot program. It already exists and is just kind of an extension of that. It's passed the Senate 23-10 on Tuesday, I guess that was the 18th. And then on the 14th, Senate Bill 143 passed. I have to scroll through these quickly. That's the extension on the prohibition of facial recognition, which was also amended in committee, but so that passed 33-1. And I believe that one with her committee amendments, it looks like it got, case is still in an amend position. So there may still be work to do on that one in the House. So I can kind of keep an eye on that when it gets scheduled as it moves over to the House. It's just been introduced right now, but not scheduled. So those are the ones that moved in the past week. This coming week, we will have House Bill 1146, which is the increase on the bed caps for juvenile detention facilities. That one is in Health and Human Services in the House on the 26th. House Bill 1278, which is the accountability bill that they heard testimony on a couple weeks ago, but they've laid that over for action. It was actually originally scheduled yesterday, but had to push it back, I think, mainly because one of the sponsors is Rep. Byrd, and she was tied up at the JBC. So push back the vote on that one to 27th at 1:30 in House Ed. Senate Bill 63, the library standards, which I had almost forgotten about until I saw that pop up in the calendar. that one is now in the House and it is scheduled for hearing in House Ed on the 26th upon adjournment. As I mentioned earlier, the dyslexia bill is scheduled on the 31st, week after next at 1:30. And then the other one that I just wanted to alert you all to, because I think we took a position to support, although I should go back and check. The bill on the website accessibility that makes sure that the liability is transferred to the website designer if they're not compliant. That one is in Senate Ed on the 2nd. So again, week after next. So yeah, that is everything currently calendared. I tend to not tell you about anything more than a week out because calendars just don't stick further than that. But those two kind of more notable ones, the tech liability one and the dyslexia one, I thought maybe just so you're kind of aware, those are the following week. But there are some scheduled further out, but they'll probably move. And then of course the long bill coming out a week later will probably also throw things off with that. So
Yeah.
So
Okay.
anyway, that's kind of the quick and dirty.
All right.
All right.
Carolyn, did you have any questions?
Hey, no, I didn't. Sorry, I just had an overlapping meeting and I'm just heading down the road right now. So no, I didn't have any, but I got in here kind of late. But on the one for the dyslexia, you said the hearing for it is on the 30th. Did I hear that correctly?
I think it's the 31st. The hearing is the 31st.
It's the 31st. Okay, and I guess I would just wonder if PSD, after it looks at that, should either send anybody down to testify or not. So I guess that's just a bill I think that maybe we do need to keep a closer eye on, just because of that we have been trying to give more due attention to dyslexia in the district and around doing the right thing. So
Yeah.
it might be a good one to watch.
Yeah, I think when Connor, when you send the question out to staff, just let them know that on the 31st it is going to committee, so that if we want to testify on it, that would be good.
Yeah,
So-
maybe alerting the time sensitivity would probably be helpful so they know they need to take a look at it quickly.
Yeah, and you know, I know that Anna Labetta is really interested in this, and it wouldn't hurt to mention it to her too, because she might want to take a look at it and tell us also if she has any concerns or if she supports it as well.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, just let me know. You know, obviously we can revisit it next Friday, but if anything comes up before then that you know, think I should know, or any questions, clarification people need, anything like that, texting is the best way to catch me these days, but I'm happy to find out information if you need it.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thanks a lot, Ann.
All right, I'll see you guys next week.
Thanks,
Thank
Ann.
you.
See
Happy
you next
Friday.
week.
Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.